Live from Atlanta, Georgia, it's the Zach Ballinger Show, where we help you find your direction through passion and purpose. My name is Zach Ballinger. I'm your host. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Two ways you can join the show: YouTube, subscribe, there's the Zach Ballinger Show. Also, we're streaming on our social media links. You're going to find all these interviews. We're doing a great new format. So, the last couple of episodes, we've been working with a real life career coach and Terry McDougall with a real life client in Raleigh. And this is our third of our 4 episode series. And this series is entitled The Resume portion of the career coaching. And so what we've done is we've led ourselves up to this point. Terry's done a great job of taking Raleigh from questions about trying to find his strengths, his passions, what kind of work environment he likes, asking him questions about that, giving him strength finder quizzes and assessments to really understand his personality and who he likes to work with, and then giving him that network piece, how to network, how to get your name out there, how to connect with folks in that profession. And now we're on the resume phase. So again, Terry, thank you so much for doing this. Let's say somebody's out there listening to the show. Where can they find you if they want to maybe one-on-one career coach?
They can go to my website at terrybmcdougall.com or connect with me on LinkedIn, and my handle there is Terry B McDougall.
Awesome. And anybody hiring out there, Raleigh's got a nice LinkedIn, so you can connect with him. And so, Raleigh, thank you so much for volunteering to be a part of the show. We appreciate it.
Happy to be a part of it.
All right, Terry. So I'm going to turn it over to you. This is the resume portion of the show, and so we'll leave it with you.
Great. Well, so as I was saying before we hit record, one of the first things that a lot of people ask me when they're kind of exploring whether they want to work with me is whether I do resumes, which I actually do work with my clients on resumes, but I really feel like most people focus way too much on the resume. I think of the resume as your marketing piece, but much like what we've done with Raleigh, before you start with your, sales piece, marketing piece, your resume, you really have to start with what's your marketing strategy. So getting clear on what is it that you want? Who do you want to sell yourself to? If you really think about yourself as the product and you're out in the job market trying to find somebody that wants to buy, it's important for you to kind of think about what it is that you want to do first before you start working on the resume. And there's some other things to consider too. I know a lot of people will put a resume together and they will apply to dozens. I've even had some people say, I've applied to 150 jobs online. It's very easy to do that. But, Raleigh and I have talked about this, that networking is a really important way to look for a job. But all I want to say is that the resume is important, but it's not the number one thing. The number one thing is you getting clear on your goal and putting a strategy together to find a job that is aligned with who you are. But what I did was I took Raleigh's existing resume and I put it into a format that is easily scannable, and we'll take a look at both of these in just a moment. Also asked Raleigh to look back over his career and to start thinking about his success stories, because many people approach their resume as more of a job description rather than an impact report, if you will. And most organizations, I would say pretty much all organizations, want to hire people who are going to help create value for their organization. And the best way to help persuade them that you might be one of the candidates that can do that best is to demonstrate on your resume how you've done that in previous jobs. And so one thing to really think about is go back over your career and think about, what are the problems that I've solved? What are the actions that I took? And what are the results of the things that I've been involved in? And if there's any way to measure that, make sure that you include these, what I call PAR stories, problem, action, result. Include these in each one of your jobs, because it's so much more persuasive. You know, if somebody's looking at resume and they're seeing that, like, oh, as the manager, you were able to find a vendor that decreased the cost of paper by 50%, thereby saving the company $50,000 a year. That is really tangible and meaningful versus saying I was responsible for managing vendors. That you don't know whether, did you do a good job? Were you effective doing that? So just think about your resume as an impact report. What kind of impact have you had, and what kind of impact could you have going forward? So Zach, I think we can share now, and I'll just kind of show the evolution of what Raleigh started with. And by the way, Raleigh, I think that your resume was fine to start with, but part of what I'm always trying to help my career coaching clients do is to make sure that their resume, like if you can make it through, cut through the clutter and actually make it to the desk of somebody in HR or the hiring manager, you want your resume to be very quickly scannable, because a lot of times they're looking at, a stack of dozens of resumes, and they're not going to spend a lot of time on the initial pass through reading every word. They're going to want to scan it and say, like, they're going to be looking for specific things as they look through the resume. So I have redacted some things on Raleigh's resume here to protect his privacy. But the resume on the left is what Raleigh started with. And a few things I want to point out. I mean, there's nothing, wrong with the format that you used at all, Raleigh, and the fact that you use New Times Roman, I think, is good because it's easily readable. Sometimes people like to go with like a sans serif font, or they like to get fancy. And for a couple reasons, I mean, so I think that that's great what you did using the New Times Roman. Sometimes people will get fancy because they think that, like, having a really coolly designed resume is going to help cut through the clutter. And I advise against that for a couple reasons. First of all, most of the time when we're applying for jobs, we're doing it through an applicant tracking system. And it is, parsing the data that's on your resume, and it's putting it into a database. And any kind of fancy formatting is going to confuse the applicant tracking system. It may not pick up bits of data from your resume. If you really, if you're in a design field or something and you want to get a fancy, designed resume in front of someone, take that with you to the interview, but use a more plain text one when you're applying online. The second thing I want to point out, and you'll notice on the left that Raleigh, I mean, it's redacted here at the top, but he put his full address in. And on the right, I did not do that. This is something that has changed over the years. Like many years ago, I'm kind of a dinosaur. I was applying for jobs before there was the internet. And back then, we typed cover letters, we, put them in an envelope and mailed them in. And back then, it made sense to include your full address because you would get rejection letters in the mail, right, if they were going to reject you. But nowadays, we're applying online, and we're providing our more private information in a secure location. So what can happen with resumes is that they have a way of getting out into, the more general public. And so you really don't want to provide more information than is necessary on the actual resume. Like your email address and your phone number is all they need in order to contact you. And then you may, like on this one on the right where I redid, I did put your city, because they want, if it's a in-person job, they may want to determine that you're sort of in a commutable distance. So the second thing that we're going to notice here is that You did have sort of like an objective statement here at the top, talking about, a summary of your experience. What, and I think, yeah, you did use I.
Oh,
It's okay. I mean, you're not a resume writer, so I think that you did a fine job with putting your resume together yourself. I do this professionally, so that's why we're working together, right?
yeah.
um, but you don't need to use the word I. And in fact, you can just sort of, everything on your resume refers to you. And so anybody reading it is going to recognize that, okay, this is Raleigh saying this. So you don't need to use the word I.
Mm-hmm.
What I recommend that people do is that they at least slightly customize their resume for each job that they apply for. And when you and I talked, you were saying that you were interested in maybe a help desk administrator type role, and so I put the job title that you're looking for at the top of the resume
Yeah.
because, as somebody is scanning this, or even as the applicant tracking system is scanning it, they actually score each application based on how closely the algorithm says your background fits the role. So the more keywords that you can have in your resume that matches the job, the higher you'll score, and the more likely it is that you will be pulled from the pack, if you will.
Yeah,
Um,
and I've actually already noticed that. So even in the
yeah,
past week and a half, the jobs I've been applying to, I've taken our template that we worked up and I've just kind of reworded it for each job that I go
yes,
apply for. It takes a
perfect.
lot more time, but you actually do get responses because yeah, you change the title at the top and then you kind of take some keywords from like the listing and then you kind of
Yep,
work those in there if you can, and then I'll
yes,
just kind of like rearrange the jobs if one's more pertinent to like the job that I'm applying to. So keep all the information,
yay.
rearrange it or reword it. Uh,
I'm thrilled to
another
hear that you're already seeing it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then another thing you said earlier about it being like a relic or whatever. I'm like, this is exactly what that is. My old resume is basically one that I've adapted since I was in college, like 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah,
And I've
yep,
just added
exactly.
to it or taken away.
Right.
That's why the
And
education's at the top.
yeah, and the resume really should be a living document. And even for people that aren't necessarily looking for a job, I always think it makes sense to, have your resume, and like add to it, right? Even if you're not looking for a job, because you never know. I mean, I've worked for an outplacement firm, which is a company that large companies will hire if they lay people off, to give them a coach to help them find a new job. And I cannot tell you how many people I've worked with who never saw it coming. We're working with an organization for 20 years and they thought they were going to retire from there. And then all of a sudden, they were like, oh, I haven't done a resume in 20 years. So it's a lot easier to keep up with it than it is to create it and be like, okay, 5 years ago, what was that major project I worked on?
Trying to go back retro,
So
added what
yeah, totally,
I forgot about.
totally. Yeah, yeah. Um, so anyway, like I rewrote the objective statement here at the top to, talk about your skills and what it is that you're looking for, um, eh, what your hard skills are, a little bit with the soft skills. And this was something that, I've given you some feedback on this, that I always like, it's not uncommon for people to put things like hardworking, honest, detail oriented person. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. Like every company wants that, but anybody can say that about themselves. And so what I really suggest that people do is that your resume has limited real estate. So focus more on the hard skills, and then, because the hard skills are going to get you the interview, and then demonstrate the soft skills once you get the interview, because it's very easy to say like, I'm detail oriented, but it's if you say you're detail oriented, make sure that you spell check and proofread your resume, because there's nothing worse than, you know, saying you're detail oriented and having a mistake in your resume. So anyway, you'll also see that the next section, well, actually, I want to point this out, that if you look down the middle here, I've got like the sections clearly delineated, right? So if somebody's scanning this, they're going to say, okay, he's looking for a help desk administrator role, certifications, professional experience. And you did put your education at the top. I moved it to the bottom, mainly because this is typically where you'll find, this is where employers are usually looking for the education at the end.
Yeah.
Typically, people will put the education at the top if they're a recent college graduate and they really don't have a lot of experience.
Exactly.
So anyway, but also, like, if you see the headings, I put them in the middle so that if they're scanning, they can see that. And then this was your certifications were taking up a lot of space here, and so I just put it in this small box.
Yeah.
You know, so they can see them all there, and also it will be picked up by the key, you know, in keyword searches.
So
When
one thing I had a question about, I added on, I guess, certification / like skills section. I think it's at the bottom of that old one, maybe. But it was just kind of an afterthought. Is it there? Yeah, it is. Okay. And that's basically where I would put the keywords initially, try and get some hits on it. Because I didn't really know what to do with it.
Yeah, you know, I think that, you know, when I'm looking at the skills here, some of these are kind of repeated here. And I think I did take some things from the skills and I put it in the certification. But things like the emotional intelligence, this is one of the ones, like I was saying with the soft skills, like anybody can say that they're emotionally intelligent, you know, and so I would not even, you know, use any space on this. Just when you go in, show your emotional intelligence, you know, because a lot of people can say it and they don't have it.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, and then, you know, why even put it there, right? They're gonna interview for that. They're trying to narrow the field to people who are qualified, and then they're going to interview for cultural fit and for, you know, if they credibly believe that you're going to fit in and provide value. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to point out is that, you know, if we look at under experience, you know, you led with assistant manager, you know, so your title, and then where you worked, and then the location, and then the place. And you'll see what I did here is that I led with where you worked, caps, bolded, and then with the role underneath. And the reason for this is that this is when I was talking about having something that's scannable. Most of the time, people are looking for what company did they work for first, right? Okay. And then they're going to say, what did they do there? And so there's the company, and then there's the title, and then I had recommended to you, and on this, I think that we probably need to, like, I should have mentioned this, that Raleigh and I are still working on tweaking his resume. That's why what you're seeing, there's some like highlighting and so forth. But under the title, we have a very brief description of what his like scope of responsibility was. And then under that, bullets of what he actually did in the role. So, and then if we want to just scroll down to the bottom, Zach, and then we use the same approach to the university. So Raleigh already has an associate's degree, so we have that with his graduation date. and then he's working on his BS in computer science. And so I can't remember how you approached it on your resume, but basically I looked and said, okay, he looks like he's okay, anticipated May 24. So I put candidate for bachelor's computer science, meaning that you're working on it,
Yeah.
and the expected completion date is May 24.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just like a really nice, clean way to put this in. I actually didn't put your honor society in there for your associates, but we could put that in there, and I would put it just as a bullet underneath.
Okay.
Because that is impressive. That demonstrates the quality of the work that you did. You weren't just eking by with C's, but, you were doing well enough to make it into the honor society.
Yeah.
So I think that's worthwhile to include. So one other thing, and I don't know if you did this on yours, but we did use the header to put your name and, just one line with your contact information and your page 2, because sometimes when hiring managers are getting printed out, and I don't know if every place does it the same way, but I used to get printed out copies of all the resumes of people who applied online, and sometimes the pages get mixed up. And so, maybe I'm looking and saying, oh, wow, this guy worked at this particular place. And there's no name on it. So you always want to make sure that you have your contact information and your name on your second, and third page if you have a 3-page resume. So that is just kind of an overview of what I've done here. It wasn't, it really was just taking what you had and putting it in a little easier to scan template. Another tip that I have, and this goes back to the keyword matching, is there is a fantastic, I guess it's like basically an app, which is called jobscan.co, where if you come across a job description that you want to apply for online, you can copy the job description, go to jobscan.co, paste the job description in, copy your resume and paste that in, and this application will do a comparison of the job description and your resume, and it will give you a score of how closely your resume matches what they're looking for, even down to stating like, okay, they said project management, you don't have that on your resume, or they said JavaScript, whatever, and you only have that on your resume once, and they've mentioned it 3 times in the job description. And this is very helpful because you can tweak your resume to increase the keyword match. And you can do this without, so often there's many ways to describe what you've done. And maybe you've done something, but you use different words. And this is a time where it makes a difference if you have a high match, because unfortunately for many of us, that computer is going to screen out applicants who are actually qualified. And so, when we go back to what you were saying earlier, that just since, you've been using your new resume and you've been kind of tweaking it, and even though it takes longer, you're getting more hits. It's really not about how many jobs we apply for, right? Because we only need one job. It's about how many jobs we get interviews for. And we're going to get interviews for jobs that it's clear that we're a match for. So just spending a little time to, look and say, okay, how well am I, how well do I seem to be matched for this? It's just that, maybe a little more time, but time better spent, because you're going to get a higher return on the investment of your time if you actually get the interview.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty much all I have to say about the resumes. But, I would, Zach or Raleigh, if you have any questions, because I feel like there's a lot about this that, um,
Yeah, I wanted to chime in and
yeah,
make a couple of points. So, Terry, first of all, thank you so much. Like you said, Raleigh didn't, there's nothing that he did wrong. It's just that we don't, for people out there listening, we understand you're not resume writing every day.
right,
And maybe you've been out of the workforce for 10 years and you find yourself without a job. Things have changed a lot. So,
yeah,
first of all, I think this was so helpful. I think this episode is going to be watched a lot because we get a lot of questions on resumes. And if you guys even take a look from the left to the right, it's so much cleaner. As a person that looks at resumes all day, I'm going to be more gravitated towards this resume because it's all laid out for me. It's easy. We talked about last episode's hiring managers really don't, they're not reading a resume like a dissertation. They get it in front of them and then they almost start the interview process. And we almost have to have all these things right up for us. So look how much more cleaner these job descriptions are. Terry did a great job with this job description up front. I love these headings. It makes it very scannable. Everything she said is the truth. Like, look how much palatable this is for a hiring manager to look at and understand. And so, and the education piece, some people may not know that, but just like putting your education at the bottom where you focus in what she said on your hard skills at the top. And so people gravitate towards this. I love this little box that you've made. This really draws my eyes to this. So I'm saying, if I'm trying to hire somebody for a tangible role, what certifications do they have? Boom, it pops out. Boom, the professional experience is right here. Another thing for you guys to consider, and it's really hard unless you're doing career development or you understand, but when you're in a job right now, make sure to keep some of these emails where you guys get recognitions. If you've done a leadership project, if you've taken on an extra task, if you've done something, and make sure to try to document it by a number percentage. For some reason, and maybe you can comment on this, Terry, corporations love through customer service, I was able to retain 20% of our clients. They
yes,
really want something like in numbers and percentage. And I think what happens, Terry, is a lot of clients don't know that. So we just continue to work our jobs. We don't keep anything. So we don't know what kind
hmm
of number to even put down there.
yeah,
But if we have that in our forefront of our mind and you guys are out there listening, just remember that if you got something with a tangible number, print that baby out, put it away, keep it, and make sure you place it on your resume. What do you think, Terry?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say there's only three ways to add value in an organization. You're either helping them make money, save money, or reduce risk. And guess what? All three of those things are measurable. So if no matter what you do, okay, if you are the receptionist answering the phone, you know, you can measure this. You can measure how many calls are you answering every day. Um, you know, how are you supporting, maybe the sales department that actually is going out and making money? Um, Somehow what you're doing is connected to one of those things. And so think creatively about this. And, you know, one of the things, and Raleigh and I have kind of started this process, but it's not uncommon when I'm working with somebody on their resume for me to keep going back to them and saying, you know, like they'll have a bullet on there and I'll say, well, so what? So what? So what? Tell me why this is important, right? Like, why was this important for you to put on your resume? And I don't mean it in a disrespectful way. What I'm trying to do is drive them to think about how did that add value for your organization. And one other thing is that when people are scanning resumes, they're eyes stop on numbers, on percentage points, on so on dollar signs. Our eyes just tend to stop on those symbols. And so if somebody's scanning your resume and they're saying, they increase productivity by 50%, they reduced expenses by $20,000, that is immediately demonstrating how you have added value at a previous organization. And let me just talk to you about what the calculation that hiring managers are making is, that they're thinking, I have to invest. First of all, I'm already investing a lot of time in this job search process. The hiring manager already has a job. And when somebody leaves and they need to hire, they are doing this off the side of their desk, right? So they're busy with their day job, and then off the side of their desk, they're hiring. So they're investing their own time in it. They're going to bring somebody on. They're going to have to spend time training them. During that time, that person is not necessarily, they're not really adding value, right? They're actually taking away from the value of the organization, but the organization is making the investment because they believe that eventually this person is going to add value. And there's nothing more frustrating. I guess I should say hiring is risky. And there's nothing more frustrating than hiring somebody, investing all of that time, and then having them not work out. So when you demonstrate that you have added value and you have calculated that value, that makes people feel like, oh, they did that at their previous employer, they can do that here. If I'm going to pay this person $50,000 and at their last job, they doubled sales and they helped to, reduce costs, they're calculating like, oh, well, that's worth $50,000. So that increases their level of confidence that if they hire you, that you will be able to do that at their place too. So, and whether the hiring manager is even, consciously thinking about that, this is what's going on in their head. They don't want to have to, and believe me, I've made some bad hires in my career, and it's very frustrating when you put all of that investment into the process and then the person doesn't work out. You really want that person to come in and nail it and be like, hey, here's how I've added value and I can do this for you too.
Yep. Thank you so much for explaining all that, Terry. Raleigh, any last thoughts or questions?
I think what I didn't really get, I mean, it's like you said, the content of my resume wasn't so bad. It was just a lot of those little things that I had no idea.
Totally.
They just add up so much, like where to place things, how to phrase things. It's just
sure.
There's so many little aspects that you pointed out that just make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. And Zach, I thought of one other thing too. And I think I did put this, I did use this in Raleigh's resume, and that is use action words in your resume. So, led, coordinated, managed, drove, whatever. But if you are if you're getting to a point where you're like everything you say is like managed or coordinated or whatever, you can actually Google resume action words and you will get a full list of, probably hundreds of verbs that you can use. And I would say get creative and get specific about, did you program it? Programmed, created, drove, collaborated. Like these are all really rich, meaningful words that can provide a lot of color and insight to people reading your resume about what you've actually done.
And if you get really nerdy, there's a guy out there that I reference all the time. I think he's one of the best, Martin Yale. He's written several books, and they're called Knock 'em Dead, How to Write a Resume. And he has several volumes. I've used that book for about 15 years. And so for 15 or 20 bucks, it's really worth the investment. I've actually talked to Martin and told him that and he's got pages of these action words.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you can that's worth the investment alone. So,
yes. That's one other thing that I want to point out. And you just said the word, which is investment. I think a lot of us, and I've been in this mindset earlier in my life that I didn't want to spend money to help make myself better, make myself more prepared for my job search. And I did at one point, I'm a career and executive coach now. And at one point I did hire a coach because I put myself up for an promotion at work that I felt like I was the heir apparent. My boss left and I was sort of his right-hand person and I didn't get the job. And I was very disappointed. So I hired somebody to help me with my confidence, help me with my interviewing skills, help me with stepping up to demonstrate myself as a leader. And it hurt a little bit in the beginning to be like, oh, I have to, pay money to help develop these skills. But within a year, I ended up getting a job that doubled my salary. And I had that job for, I worked at that company for 12 years. So that increase multiplied, and all the raises I got multiplied by 12 years. When I think back to how much I invested in myself to get to that next role, the return on the investment was incredible. Yeah. And so I'd say, invest in yourself, whether it's spending $20 on a book, whether it's spending, I think that jobscan.co is like free for a couple of scans, but then you might have to pay a little bit a month to use it. But think of, if you're able to get a job that increases your income by even just a little bit, that return on the investment is going to be worth investing in yourself to be able to interview better, to get the job more quickly. So I just wanted to raise that as, think about yourself as somebody who's worth investing in. And if you do that, and then I think that you'll find that companies are willing to invest in you as well.
Absolutely. You're spot on, Terry. This has been such a great episode. I've really enjoyed it myself. Of course, I'm kind of a career nerd, but I think it's cool because it's going to help a lot of people. So next episode, what we're going to do is something fun that I'm excited about. We're actually going to conduct a live mock interview with Raleigh. It'll be me and Terry will be on the panel. We will ask job questions, and during a real life interview, giving feedback on them. And you guys have actually asked me for these types of formats of shows, so tune in for that. But thank you again, guys, for out there for listening. Terry and Raleigh, thank you again, and we will be excited to be back with you for the 4th episode of our Career Coaching Hour. Until then, this is the Zach Ballinger Show.
Bye.